Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here and welcome to tonight's New Hampshire Organic Certification listening session with the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture, Markets and Food, hosted by the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New Hampshire. I'm Nikki Kolb, Operations Director at NOFA, New Hampshire. As an organization dedicated to farming and food, we will begin this meeting by acknowledging and honoring the first stewards of the land we live and work on today. We're broadcasting from the land of the Pennacook tribe, or Ndaki-Na, the Abenaki word for the traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki and Wabanaki peoples past and present. We acknowledge and honor with gratitude the people who have stewarded this land and its waterways through the generations. Thank you. Before I introduce tonight's speakers, I'd like to briefly go over some housekeeping and set the stage for the call. First, I'd like to remind everyone that this webinar is being recorded and will be distributed later this week. We're asking participants to please remain muted and to type any questions into the chat. I'll be moderating this discussion and will direct questions to our panelists. Please be advised members of the press may be present. If you would like your question to remain anonymous, you can chat them to me directly or change your name in Zoom. I will not read out the names of individuals who ask questions. Our intent is for attendees to feel comfortable asking their questions. The purpose of this call is to provide a space for members of the organic community to connect with the Department of Agriculture, Markets and Food on the future of organic certification in the state. The department alerted NOFA New Hampshire to their concerns with their ability to continue serving New Hampshire's organic farming community as an accredited certifying agent, or ACA, for the USDA's National Organic Program. Our organizations are collaborating to bring this issue to the organic community with the goal of working together to develop solutions and ensure continued uninterrupted certification services for New Hampshire's organic farmers. We've distributed a joint statement outlining some possible scenarios for the future of certification in the state. They are: 1, New Hampshire DAMF continues to serve New Hampshire farmers as an ACA via increased legislative and state funding support, increased certification fees, and restructuring of the Division of Regulatory Services. 2, New Hampshire DAMF discontinues certification and collaborates with NOFA New Hampshire and the NOP to assist farmers with transfer to another ACA. 3, New Hampshire DAMF discontinues certification and NOFA New Hampshire assists a regionally based ACA to certify New Hampshire organic farmers by opening a satellite office in New Hampshire. At the end of this session, we will link a survey to the chat for you to share additional feedback. And now I'll introduce our panelists and turn the discussion over to the Commissioner to share more information. So tonight we'll hear from Commissioner of Agriculture, Markets and Food, Sean Jasper, New Hampshire DAMF's Director of the Division of Regulatory Services, Alan Wyman, NOFA New Hampshire's Board President, Julie Davidson, NOFA New Hampshire's Board Treasurer, Joyce Ford, and myself. We realize this has been a very challenging year for farmers and that farmers and community members may be concerned. We hope to talk through as many questions as we can tonight to bring clarity to this situation. This listening session is also not the last time we'll discuss this topic, and we hope to continue engaging the community about organic certification in the state. Thank you again for being here, and thank you, Commissioner Jasper, for starting us off by sharing more details. You want me to unmute you? Here we go. I'll ask you to unmute. There we go.
Well, good evening. I'm pleased to see so many people joining us tonight. By way of a little bit of background as to how we got here, I think you are all aware that 2 years ago we had a less than elegant end to our animal and processing organic program. And I want to assure you that was not by choice and wasn't the way I would have liked it to have rolled out in retrospect. But the first thought that we had was making sure that everybody would be certified. And so as ugly as that turned out to be for everyone, sort of what we had to do. And the reason we had to do with that was because on the way out the door, the previous director said, we have to end animal and processing organics. Dave Russo stepped into that role, and I said to him, no, we're not going to do that. And he said, okay. And as he began to look into it, realized that, yes, we didn't have any choice. And so as we've been going through the process, Alan came on shortly after that, has gotten his feet wet in this, been going through audits with the folks from USDA, and we're looking at what our capabilities are with the current staffing level. And quite honestly, you know, we've been concerned, and we are concerned. We had to get through the last legislative session and had to get through the budget to really begin to focus on this. And as soon as we had some breathing room, we started talking with NOFA New Hampshire about our concerns and how we could best protect you folks. And so we have been defining that and looking at what are the issues and what is a safe level of staffing to make sure that we can certify all of you. Our determination is that right now we have 2 people who are fully certified, 1 who is in training. If we were to lose those 2 people, we're done. There's no wiggle room in that. That's not acceptable. Shouldn't be acceptable to you. It's not acceptable to me. So we started, you know, deeper discussions and have really looked at the idea that in order to have a sustainable program here, Alan can't be in charge of this program. He's a director of the division with 12 other programs under his belt. He's been spending roughly 45% of his time on organics. And the other inspectors have other responsibilities as well, and they've been spending about 40% of their time on that. So we think that we can be safe if we hire somebody to be a program specialist and to hire an additional part-time inspector, you know, giving us 4 people ultimately who would be certified. If we lost any 2 of those, we would be able to continue in the short term. I think you all know our fees are set by statute and never been changed, and they're ridiculously low. Right now, we're only bringing in $15,000 a year through the program. And the rough costs are probably north of $200,000 right now to support the program as it is. There's about 3,000 hours of staff time going into that. So what we're going to be presenting to the legislature are those facts, and saying, in order to continue at the same level we are, we need 1.5 persons. We will need another vehicle. Puts us at about roughly $165,000 a year in new funding to continue to have a program that is sustainable. That, if it was nothing but fees, I don't think anybody would want to sign on to that, because the small scale that we're doing, certifying 66 people right now, that would be about $2,400 a person to certify. Of course, you can get up to $7,500 of that back through the cost share, but doesn't seem to be reasonable. So the legislature ultimately will have to make the decision of what they want to do. We're not under statutory obligation to provide this service, but I have no intention of just ending it on my own. Ultimately, the legislature needs to be involved and make the decision. What are the fees that are sustainable, and how much money from general funds are they willing to put into the program? And that's where we're headed. That's where we're starting early. We don't expect to lose anybody. I mean, things could change in a heartbeat if we lost staff. But my intent is that we would continue certifying into next year at least. But at some point, this has to be decided, and not for our benefit, but for your benefit ultimately. So I'll leave it at that, I think.
Thank you. Did any of our other panelists want to say anything? I'm not sure if you need me to unmute you. Okay. Yes, thank you. One moment. I'm clicking. There we go.
Yeah, this is Joyce Ford. I just wanted to, just a little tiny correction there. Instead of $7,500 on the cost share, it's $750. Just a small thing.
I am so sorry. Yeah,
No, that's okay.
too many numbers running through my head.
Right.
Thank
And
you,
one of the other topics we discussed was, could you explain the legislative process for this?
Yes, and I know there are a couple of legislators on the call tonight. They have a bill filing period. That's the other reason that we wanted to move rapidly with this is I think their filing period opens up September 11th, roughly, and is only open for, I should have looked up on the calendar, but it's only open for a week or two. So something would have to be put into legislation in September to move this forward. So we wanted to get there as rapidly as possible. And thank you again, Joyce.
Thank you. Okay, so for folks who might have joined after I initially welcomed everyone, we are taking questions in the chat. So I know that we have some legislators on the call. If they would like to chime in with anything, I can read information out, or also any other questions or comments. So I do have a comment in here right now that I can read out, and then we can continue to take questions. And if other panelists have something that they want to add, I'll unmute you. So please just raise your hand. So we have in here a comment that says, we have a large investment in custom printed retail containers marked with New Hampshire Department of Ag Markets and Food, and the lead time to source these is nearly 2 years. So if New Hampshire stops certifying us, we worry that this investment would be lost.
So to that, I think that's why it's a good idea. We're starting early on this. So thinking through this very quickly on my feet, I would say there perhaps would need to be a transition period. You know, we are hopeful that our current staff, who are very dedicated to the program, absolutely want to continue to do this. And I'm very appreciative of that. And I know that several of them are on the call here as well. It might be something that for those who have an investment that is going to be harmful if we were to end. I haven't talked to Alan about this. I haven't talked to anybody about this, but maybe there could be a transition of people we certify and continue to do some number for a period of time if we don't have the staffing. Ultimately, as I said, you know, we're perfectly willing and happy to continue to do this if the legislature provides the funding to do it. If not, then that would be a consideration that I would certainly have, is how do we make sure that people aren't harmed financially by this.
Thank you. And I see that there was an answer to that in the chat that also came through, that someone who went through a similar situation and had to transition 2 years ago mentioned that a new certifier would have to ultimately approve that label, but often they might allow you to use up an existing label stock. So if that's a concern that came in. I see that also we have Representative Bixby's raised his hand also. And I have another comment in the chat. Would you like everyone to continue through the chat, Commissioner Jasper, or would you like legislators to be able to comment?
I think it would be appropriate for the legislators to be able to comment.
Okay, great. So I'm going to pivot to Representative Bixby and ask you to unmute. It might take a minute, as we've seen. There we go.
Okay, So just a clarification on the process. The bill filing period is from September 11th to September 15th for House members. There is a more open period for senators to file legislation. And my sense is that I don't think that we can come up with a good piece of legislation in order to make that in the next 2 weeks, to have that ready for the House filing period. I think that we would have to depend on having a Senate member file something on the Senate side, and which is that is entirely doable. So that's just in that process end of it. One of the concerns I have is that this is going to require an appropriation, and appropriations are often done in the first year of the term. So I'm not sure how smooth it would be to get an appropriation for the additional position and a half for within the current legislative term. That's something that would have to be discussed with the Finance Committee, but there might be some delay in that on that end, simply because of the typical cycle of the legislature. There may be a way to find some money. It depends on what the state revenues look like in this coming term. So that's sort of a, there is an opportunity for doing some legislation, but it would I'm not sure how whether it would actually manage to go forward this term, or whether it would have to move into next term.
Thank you, Representative Bixby. And I see Representative Gould, you have your hand up too, so I'm going to ask you to unmute. Might take a minute. There you go.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I was wondering, as I thought through this, I'm thinking about the lawyers who represent low-income people. It's a legislative requirement that we have through the state, but we contract through a private agency. So I'm wondering if there's a possibility, as we look at, let's say, a 5-year transition period for this change to occur, is it possible that the state could contract with NOFA for NOFA to be the people who employ the certifiers and do all the actual work, but it's still a state of New Hampshire certification?
I haven't thought of that. What we were thinking about was having NOFA be the certifier, NOFA New Hampshire be the certifier, and having them contract with somebody else. And so the certification would still say New Hampshire, wouldn't say the Department of Agriculture. But I think pretty much anything is possible. The only real risk here is, as I say, if we were to lose employees and not be able to certify, we need to have a plan. And I certainly appreciate what Representative Bixby said. We're not talking a huge amount of money, and there are probably some variations there that could work. I don't think, from our point of view, I don't think it's a very complicated piece of legislation. Pretty much an employee and a half, and that's what it is. So we can talk about that some more, Representative, as we move forward. But I'm open to pretty much anything that protects our organic growers.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands from legislators up right now, but if you do,
Representative Wolf.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you could, I will find you here, but if you do have a question, one of the representatives, if you could please raise your hand in the chat function. we're in the bottom screen there. Here you are. Okay, I'm gonna ask you to unmute Representative Wolf. Might take a moment. There we go.
Thank you. I don't remember how to hit the chat thing to raise my hand on there, so thank you very much for recognizing my waving of the hand. Commissioner, is this strictly a monetary issue that you don't have enough money to run the program as you see you need it?
Actually, I wouldn't say it's a monetary issue, it's a staffing issue. And which of course always leads back to money. But the problem is we simply don't have enough staff for us to have a level of comfort that this is a program that is sustainable here. You know, the requirements that NOPA has put on us are steadily increasing. There are only 12 states, including New Hampshire, that do any certification themselves. So that leaves the 38 other states relying on other certifiers. And being such a small agency to begin with, and believe me, when I go out there around the country and meet with my fellow commissioners and looking at some of the sizes of the departments of agriculture around the country and even in New England, we're pretty tiny. There's not too many states that are as small in terms of staffing as we are to begin with. And so to be taking up the amount of time we are right now, it is, you know, we're not attending to our other duties, but that's not my primary concern. That's the way it's been here for a while. It's just the ever increasing requirements and the realization of what happened 2 years ago, that we need to fish or cut bait here. We either need to do this right or we need not to do it at all.
Oh, okay, but I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. You need to have more staff, you need to have more money. And this program is one where the fees have been set by the legislature. And in my 20-odd years of being an organic farmer, we have not raised the rates at all. So would it pay, and I'm directing this at Representative Bixby and others, to allow the department to adjust rates in a logical manner rather than having to go to the legislature to raise it? I think that there are many agencies within Concord that adjust their own rates. They have to take it to GELCAR, they have to do other things, but yours is set in statute, or ours, excuse me, are set in statute, and times have changed in 22 years. So I think we should be looking at substantial increases. And speaking for myself, when the program got dropped 2 years ago, it cost me a lot more money to go over to MOFCA. So I think everybody that's on this discussion knows it's going to cost money, or more money than we're paying now. And the people that I've talked to are willing to do that.
Thank you.
Would
Go
you
ahead.
just tell me how I can get to the chat?
Yes, on the bottom of your screen, there's a menu. If you're on your computer, and there should be a little icon that you can hover over the bottom and it will say chat. And then you can click on that and you can type into the chat.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to our chat here. So we have just a few comments and some more questions that have been coming in. One comment was about historical funding of the certification program, and also acknowledging that organic food is the largest growing food sector. Organic farming is also a centerpiece of climate mitigation, local food production, food security, and more. That's just a comment. I'm going to also ask another question here. And this might be something that the NOFA team, myself and Joyce might be able to answer a bit of. Do any of our panelists have information on the strengths, weaknesses, and budgets of other New England certifiers? I'm fully sure exactly what this question is looking for, but Joyce, you seem that you've unmuted.
Well, we did, I did find out from from Vermont Organic Farmers stated that they charge between the cost for their certification that actually cost the agency is between $1,300 and $1,500 per operation. So they charge $500. So they are having to subsidize with donations and other ways of earning money from NOFA Vermont that subsidizes for the Vermont Organic Farmers. MOFGA, their fees are quite a bit more, like maybe $1,100. And they said the same thing. It costs them about between $1,200 and $1,500 for the actual cost of doing certification. And partly that reason is because in addition to doing the certification of an individual farm, there's a lot of other responsibilities that an agency has, that accredited certifying agency. They have to pay $20,000 to the USDA for accreditation every 5 years, and then they have updates in between that cost money. They have to do 5% of their operations. They have to do as unannounced inspections, and so that is completely absorbed by the agency. They don't charge the operation for that kind of thing. And there's new requirements because of their strengthening organic enforcement rules that were approved last year, 2 years ago, and are going to be enforceable by March 2024, which the department is responsible for implementing. So that doesn't answer all of your question, but I mean, I had a certified organic farm in Minnesota for many years, and last year that fee was $1,200. So it is increasing. The costs of certification are increasing, annually.
Thank you. That was helpful. I'm going to continue to read some comments that have come through the chat so that folks on here feel that we've shared their thoughts and also asked some more questions. So just another comment that came in is we need our certifying agency to support the logistics of shipping organic products to the European Union. That was a comment. And then another question that came in is if the legislature decides about raising fees, who makes the ultimate decision to discontinue certification through New Hampshire DAMF? Oh, you have to unmute 1 second, Commissioner.
I'm sorry. Think I'm unmuted now. So ultimately, it is the commissioner's decision because it is a voluntary program. The legislature has not mandated it. As I said, as long as I'm commissioner, if we have the resources to do this properly, meaning the staff, then I don't see any reason that we would not do it. But that does mean that we need that additional person and a half. I'm not willing to do it with less than that because of what it's doing to the operations and the risk that it puts you at, as I've said about 6 times now. So
thank you. So the next question was, I'm not sure if you have this response at the ready, but the question is, how much does the department pay USDA to be accredited? Oh, Alan, did you want to? I'll unmute both and then you can both respond. There you go.
Thank you. I think Joyce nailed it with her explanation. That's pretty close to what it's a little bit more for us that we pay. What we do is it's the costs associated with those audits I have to put into the budget. It happens from the NOP every 2.5 years.
Mhm.
And internally, we hire somebody every year to come and do an audits, and that runs about somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 a year on top of what we do with the NOP.
Thank you. Okay, another question that came in is, and again, I'm not sure if you'll have this information ready for this moment, but over the years, what was the top number of certified organic farmers and producers in the state? Oh, yes, I'll ask you to unmute. There you go.
I can tell you from the research I've done thus far, just give me a second here. So I can tell you with certainty, and I think we got into this through RSA 20 years or so ago. I don't know what was going on before then, but I could start my statistics in 2005. We started off with 69 entities, and we had, my understanding is we had the same amount of employees. I could be wrong on that. That makes me a little hesitant to make that statement, but I do know in 2016, I think that was the case. We were certifying 189 for livestock processors, wild crop and crop. By 2020, it was 154. And then you're all aware, well, many of you are probably aware what happened 2 years ago, and that brought us down to 66. I believe there are, so we have 60, and I'm just talking crop, we have 66 that we certify, and I think there's 47 others that are certified throughout the state of New Hampshire for crop that we do not certify.
Thank you. So it sounded about maybe 190 at the height or so. So the next comment came from Julie, our board president, and just noting here in the chat that some of our policy initiatives, NOFA New Hampshire is advocating to increase federal cost share from $750 to $1,500, but of course that's not guaranteed, but we are advocating for that. I'm continuing to read the chat, and we'll take a moment here. Yes, so and the next comment here in the chat is the joint statement that was distributed by the department and NOFA New Hampshire listed 3 options, which I also detailed at the beginning of this call. So the question is asking about the 2 other possible options, and I can read those again. And Joyce, potentially you and I could take this question. Would that be helpful? Okay. So those other 2 options for folks who might not have tuned in at that point was the first option was New Hampshire DAMF continues to serve New Hampshire farmers as an ACA via increased legislative and state funding support, increased certification fees, and restructuring of the Division of Regulatory Services. We've been talking about that mostly. The second item was New Hampshire DAMF discontinues certification and collaborates with NOFA New Hampshire and the NOP to assist farmers with transfer to another ACA. And then the third option was or possibility rather, was NOFA New Hampshire, or sorry, New Hampshire DAMF discontinues certification, and NOFA New Hampshire assists a regionally based ACA to certify New Hampshire organic farmers by opening a satellite office in New Hampshire. Joyce, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Well, why don't you go ahead and start and then I can fill in.
Great. Okay, so the second option, which was the discontinuation of certification services and then collaborating with NOFA and the NOP, would be essentially that farmers who are currently certified organic by the department would transfer their services to any other ACA, which farmers currently have the option to certify with anyone that they would like to. So this would be transferring certification, or if farmers did not want to continue being certified, which of course we would hope wouldn't happen, that they would not continue with their certification. And we would try to help farmers with that through that process with the department, and the NOP would help as well. That was that option. And then the third option was the possibility of NOFA New Hampshire becoming a satellite office of another regionally based ACA, an accredited certification agency. And so this would be, again, a possibility that NOFA New Hampshire would open a satellite office in our state and do some inspections and other certification work, but that the final decision for certifications would lie with the home office, which would be the other accrediting agency. But Joyce, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I think that how that would work would be if NOFA New Hampshire is an educational nonprofit and they would have to create, or we would have to create an LLC in order to do a satellite office and have a cooperating agreement with the regionally based ACA, which is the accredited certifying agent. ACA is just another name for a certification agency. But within that office, then people could apply for certification. They could send in their applications. They'd have somebody to talk to, somebody to answer questions that's in the state. The initial review could be done by that office. The inspectors would be sent out from that office. And so then everything that those regionally based certifiers do at this point in time is all online. So your applications are online and all the, all of your records are scanned in and uploaded. So anybody can do that kind of work from anywhere. So they're very open to the idea of having a satellite office to help New Hampshire farmers have somebody close by. And the other thing that's been talked about is the idea of, because you have a New Hampshire Department of Ag logo that's used on labels, and we don't want to lose, the New Hampshire identity. So would there be the possibility of having a New Hampshire organic logo that could be used? And so that is a possibility that could be done. This would all have to go through accreditation with the USDA and be approved by them before it could start. And we're just starting the conversation with the regionally based certifiers now. So it would take some time for this to be operational.
Julie, did you want to add more?
No, Joyce added in the end. I just wanted to emphasize that we've been talking with other certifiers in the region about getting a New Hampshire logo, because I know that's an important part of the conversation for many farmers. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you. Okay, I hope that answered that question a bit. So I'm just going to keep scrolling. And then if folks, I just wanted to ask again, if folks have questions, if you could please type them into the chat, and I will read out your questions. Okay, there's a resource here. Are there grants through LAMP that could help support this effort? And a link, thank you for sharing that. Another question came in. What would happen if the community went to the legislature and made it mandated, essentially, certification? Oh, do you want me to unmute you, Commissioner?
No, I've got it.
Great.
So that's certainly a legislative option. The reality is that we might not be able to do it to the NOP standards if they don't give us resources. We're mandated to do a lot of things here in the department, and unfortunately, we don't do all of them well because we don't have the resources we need. When I came into this position, the former commissioner told me that we were in constant triage mode. I think I've moved us beyond that at this point. The legislature has been very supportive of our asks, but there are still things that we are not doing as well as I think we should. And I think that all the directors would agree with me on that. And so the legislature can mandate things, but they can't make people do things that we don't have the resources to do. So that's the reality.
Thank you for your response. So the next question might have been touched on a little bit earlier when Representative Bixby was speaking, but the question here is it a realistic possibility to file a bill in September? If so, who would take the lead on that? If it's not realistic to get a bill drafted for this filing period, how likely is it that the department would then make a move to discontinue the program?
Well, I think it's realistic for this session, whether it be a House bill or a Senate bill. There is enough time because I did miss the first component or the second component, which is a fee increase. And, we may not want to continue on the acreage fee as we do now, but now, and perhaps the process has changed a little bit on the House side. Normally, had to get the subject matter in, and then the details of the bill could follow after it was filed. And I may have seen something that said, you need more details in to start with, which might make it more likely that it would need to be a Senate bill. But it's very realistic to have a bill filed this session. What would happen if the bill doesn't pass? Well, that's why we're exploring option 2 and 3. I would continue to have us run the program as long as we possibly could until we found another partner. But I can't overemphasize the fact that if we were right now to lose the 2 people that we have who are certified, we don't have a program. There isn't one. So it's not even a matter of me discontinuing it. We're just done.
Okay, I see that Representative, go ahead, Joyce, and then I will call on our legislator.
I would just add to that if the department doesn't make the kinds of changes that the USDA is requiring, they will withdraw accreditation of the program itself. And so that would also end the program. And that by law, farms and operations have 60 days to transfer to another accredited certifying agency. And the department would assist with that. They're required to assist with that process. Just some background.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you. Okay, and again, I'm just sharing for everyone on the call that we have our panelists who are speaking, and then we're allowing our representatives to unmute and respond to direct questions, and then we're asking for everyone, other attendees on the call, to please put your questions and comments in the chat. Okay, I'm going to ask Representative Bixby to unmute. Here we go.
All right, so so I would be able to, if it is simply making the request for a position and a half, then that would be something that I could do within the next couple of weeks, and I could work with the commissioner to get that bill in. If it is where the place that might create more complications is figuring out the fee structure, but I think that might. But as the commissioner pointed out, there might be enough wiggle room once the initial bill is filed to add more details later that would be able to do that. So I would be able to put a bill in that would at least ask for funding the position and a half.
Thank you. And Representative Wolf, I see you. I'm going to ask you to unmute also. Might take a moment. There you are. There you go.
Thank you. I just can't find the little hand that Peter just put up, but I think that, and I feel for the commissioner in that he's short-staffed. I do understand that there is a new certifier who's very close to being accepted. She's got her hours in. So we're gonna get close to 3 people very soon. The situation with labor is a very, very difficult one, and I feel for the commissioner on this. I mean, the state police are down 20% in their staffing levels. Commissioner's gonna be in relatively good shape to have 3 people in next month or 2. But these are problems that we're all gonna face, that we're all facing now. And we can't plan on having enough staff so that if one person leaves, we have that. That would be overstaffing. So I think there are some ways that we can look at this and get the legislature to give us some more, but at the same time, look forward to staying current with fees and raising them as it would be appropriate, rather than just saying we don't have enough money. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Representative Wolf.
Thank you. So there was a question that came in. I know there's more questions here and we have about 12 or so minutes left. So I want to make sure we get to as many people as we can. There was another question that came in about how long it would take for NOFA to be able to handle the certification process. I think this is important to address. And Joyce, I'll start first, and then if Joyce and Julie want to chime in too, that would be great. So NOFA New Hampshire is in very beginning stages of exploring this possibility. And for NOFA New Hampshire to become a satellite office, it would also depend on the other certification agency. In terms of the feasibility, we would need to raise resources to do that. And that's why the reason that we're looking, that we would look toward becoming a satellite office if we were going to pursue such an option, rather than becoming a certification agency entirely on our own, which would require more resources. And Joyce, I'll let you go from
I'll
there.
be back in 20 minutes.
I'm going to mute whoever that was. Go ahead, Joyce.
No, I would agree with that. We determined that we really didn't have the resources to do certification on our own. In terms of, part of it is the number of certifications. If you have more in certification, more farms that are getting certified, then that's splits the cost. Vermont has over 500 farms that they certify our operations, and MOFGA has 625. So that, and New York has over 1,000. So that really helps their bottom line. The kinds of quality management systems that you have to have in place for doing certification require, like what Al, I think, was saying, was calling an internal audit. And there's all kinds of built-in kinds of events that have to happen for quality assurance, and they all cost money. So plus there would be a rather expensive database system that a lot of the certifiers are using in order to track all the materials and the dates and things that have to be the non-compliances that have to be tracked in order to meet the dates that they have to be fixed by according to the rule. So it just didn't seem very feasible for NOFA New Hampshire itself as an organization to undertake to be an ACA, and in addition to the costs of certification being that initial $20,000 for that initial audit. So that's where we thought a satellite office might be a better fit for meeting the needs of New Hampshire farmers by having a local office that they could talk to people. They would have, that would know New Hampshire farms, and would have the inspectors would come from New Hampshire and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to add anything, Julie? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, so and Joyce has a lot of experience training inspectors and has shared in the past with us that it's difficult to find trained inspectors as well. So that's another capacity issue which we haven't addressed yet on this call. And then I guess I'll turn it over to you, Nikki, because I see another question in the chat about re-adding back in some of the scopes that were dropped 2 years ago. But before I do that, I would just like to throw out a question to Representative Bixby and others on the call. If the fee structures haven't been changed in so long, would there be an opportunity to not only change the fee structure and get additional funding, but just maybe a little bit more funding to help rebuild that capacity that we lost? So I'll just throw it and leave it there.
Right. So certainly we could I assume that any legislation that would be adding in the additional positions would also involve addressing the way that the fee structure is managed, and we would not repeat the mistake that was made 20 years ago by putting the exact fees in statute. We would set a procedure for establishing fees that would require the department, the commissioner, to recommend the fees, and then those fees would get approved by a joint legislative committee that is tasked with making sure that that rules match the legislative intent, called GELCAR. So we would update the fee structure, and I imagine that we would end up with a fee structure that would look similar to that in some of our neighboring the ACAs in our neighboring states, and there'd also be I think there may be a possibility of finding some further funding to build back in a little some capacity. I don't know whether it would be feasible to get the animal certifications and the value-added certifications back into our program. That I haven't seen the numbers on that, and I think that if we did that, that would probably be a later step. I think that getting something in that will at least make sure we can do the crops is the most urgent thing. And if we can possibly build in the other parts, that that would be nice. But it also, that might be something that we might want to explore, collaborating with NOFA in terms of doing that satellite operation, and sort of as another approach to that. I guess the short answer is we can definitely do something about the crops and the fee structure for the crops. The other elements are more complicated and probably not this year. And there was a question in the chat about product registration fees, and would any of that money be available for helping fund some of this? And I actually have a question which might either go to the commissioner or to Director Wyman, which is, do we know how many product registrations we have for products that are certified by OMRI or approved by OMRI, which is the Organic Materials Certification organization? And would one possibility having those fees dedicated to helping out with the cost of certification? Oh, and one other question for either the director or the commissioner. would the database that passed in the budget help reduce the labor costs of running the organic certifications?
Alan? Gotta unmute yourself, but
I can, relative to the Omni question, we don't have the database capacity to even begin to answer that question. You know, thinking through it in my head, how I might be able to take varying databases, squash them together and do data searches using publicly available information. I'm really not sure how I would even get that information. I do have a concept of the types of products that get registered through that program, and I would be surprised if there are many, if there were a number significant enough being organic to make a difference. But you know, that's all I could say about that. I don't have the database structure to even make that determination. But qualitatively, I'd be surprised. But again, I preface that with qualitative because I really don't know.
okay, we're running out of time, and Julie's probably Nikki's probably got some questions in there that really should be answered. So if we can.
Thank you. Yes, and if we could maybe just take 5 extra minutes after 7 to make sure we try to get to some more of these questions. I think people would appreciate that. Okay, so I think we answered some of the questions that came through. There were a number of comments here about supporting legislation and supporting the continuation at the state level. And again, I want to emphasize that we're going to distribute a survey where you can also add those comments in, and we're going to be asking for feedback about stakeholders' preferences about these possibilities of how to move forward. So thank you for sharing that here, and please also in the survey. Okay. Let's see here. I'm looking through the questions about what we haven't asked yet. Has there been any discussion with the NOP about this? And also, there was another question about why hasn't the department tried to increase the fees? I think you might have answered some of these.
Now I can tell you I have been in contact with our accrediting supervisor to let her know that we're looking into these different possibilities.
As to why we haven't asked for the fees to be increased, that really doesn't solve anything for us, because all the fees, well, the fees may go into a fund in this one. I don't remember, but it would not be significant. And regardless, we need specific authorization to hire people. So we have to solve this as in totality, not just by raising fees. Doesn't do us anything.
Okay, some other questions are, has the Agricultural Advisory Board been asked for input on this? And are federal programs not allowed to fund the state certification process? Those were some questions.
So no, the Agricultural Advisory Committee is meeting next week. Certainly that can be a topic of discussion. They're coming together specifically about all of the weather events. I am not aware of any federal funding that would allow us to do this. We only have one person in the whole department who's funded through a federal program. And so unless Alan's aware of something, I don't think there's any federal support for certifiers here, particularly since this is something the feds would rather we get out of altogether to begin with.
Thank you. Yes, so in the chat, I just will emphasize again that there's a lot of comments encouraging the department to continue with certification and working with the legislature to ensure that that can continue if at all possible, as well as acknowledging how difficult this year and season has been for farmers, and that it would be helpful to farmers to continue certification at the state level. Thank you all for your comments and questions. Okay, is there anything else our panelists would like to add? Oh, I see Representative Gould would like to say something. I'm going to ask you to unmute and then allow our panelists to have any final comments before we go.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on Representative Bixby's question regarding, didn't we free up some staff in the data bill and I remember I specifically had stated that I hoped that any of the staff members freed up from the data entry on that IT bill we put through would be dedicated to helping with certifying the organic farms. Do we know where that's at, Commissioner?
Oh, no. So on the animal industry, that program hasn't gone in. That's only animal industry, and it may only allow us to catch up, but we have no idea what it's going to do. But that's off in the future. In terms of the recent funding that we got, we're only in the beginnings of going out and talking to vendors and seeing where they are. But given the responsibilities of the division, and those people are not doing the data entry. They still have forms and responsibilities that they are going to have to deal with. So certainly freeing up something like 3,000 hours isn't going to happen. But the bottom line is, it's the number of people. If I have 3 people who have nothing left to do, nothing else to do, and 2 of them left, we still don't have a program. There has to be the bandwidth to make sure, such as all the other certifiers have a whole bunch of staff and they can withstand losing a few people. We can't, and it takes us up to 18 months to certify somebody, and nobody is going to leave a certifying agency and come to work for us. It's not competitive, and that's just the reality, and that's what you really got to remember. It's the number of warm bodies that we have. And there is one other thing, Nikki, that I saw sometimes these questions flash in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had made a comment that the director didn't want to keep the program. I don't believe in my conversations with him that he has indicated that to me at all. And I think that's an unfair comment. I've asked him only to address the questions that I couldn't answer tonight. But his job has been to provide information. He's put a lot of time into this. His whole weeks have been taken up with this. I think he's a little tired right now, if anything, but he knows how much his staff is dedicated to this program, and he understands that they want to continue to do this program, and he's supportive of that. So please don't go away thinking that either of us want to see this program go away. It's a matter of reality and what we have the capability of doing. And remember what happened 2 years ago and how painful that was for everybody. We desperately want to prevent a repeat of that. And at the time, we were told, as David Russo was looking at what would it take to keep everything in place, the NOP was telling us they wanted 8 dedicated positions to run the program. I think that was the number, which is larger than the whole division right now. And so there are realities here, and there are good options. Again, there are 38 other states who are doing this very well without their departments of agriculture being involved. And I am not opposed to doing it. I'm opposed to doing it the way we're doing it. And and putting everybody who's certifying through us at risk. I just don't know how else to say it or how many more ways I can say it.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do want to just ask you one more question that came in from the chat where there were 2 points of clarity, asking for you to clarify what you think the federal government wants out of this program at the state level, and if you could clarify one of your comments that you had made mentioning that.
Not so. The federal, the NOP has certain standards that they want every certifying agency to uphold. Those are pretty rigid standards. My team, Alan's team, went through a very extensive audit this summer, and it takes a lot of time, and those standards are very high. And they're looking for the highest standards, which, you know, I applaud them for that. They certainly have concerns on how they seem to be looking the other way on other certain things and some of the things that are going on, particularly in the area of grazing of dairy and some of the grains that are coming in from other countries. I'm not saying that I'm pleased with what they're doing, but I know for what they're asking us to do, they're being very, very rigid, and I know we just can't do that at this level. And so I don't know what else I might have said, other than, you know, they're not crazy about us doing this to begin with.
Thank you. I think that might have clarified the question. And do you, Julie, did you have anything to add? I saw you unmuted, and I know we're already a bit past time, so.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and I know that NOFA New Hampshire and many of the farmers on this call are also concerned about organic integrity, and that we've been advocating for organic integrity through the years. So I know you were alluding to that as well, Commissioner. Before we depart, I would like to put into the chat the survey that both of our organizations have created. I'm going to put that in right now, so you'll have access to that, and please do fill that out. Would any of our panelists like to say anything more before I close our call?
I would just like to thank the commissioner and Alan for joining us tonight, and everyone else, all the farmers and everyone else who's on the call. It really was intended to gather feedback to help inform the strategy. As you can see, there are several obstacles and challenges, and we want to find the best solution. So your time tonight and your feedback is really important. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I also would like to thank everyone on the call and the commissioner and director and NOFA New Hampshire's board of directors who have been working on this as well. Thank you all again for joining us for this important community discussion. And again, your feedback in this session and via the survey that we've placed into the chat is very important to us and will be critical moving forward. Please fill out the survey by Monday, September 11th. And we will distribute the survey and the webinar recording to you again and to the broader public later this week. We do hope that you found this session valuable, and we hope you have a really great rest of your night. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you.